Gary Waterman, former UK Police Constable. Welcome to part 11 of my evidential research document in relation to CERN The Hadron Collider. In the last part, we looked at a meeting that took place, according to an article in April 2012, between Jeffrey Epstein, Stephen Hawking and other scientists from CERN in relation to gravitational effects. This was the same year that the Mayan calendar ended, and under 3 months before they discovered the Higgs boson or God particle. We have to consider, with all of this and all of the other previous evidence, that they tried to create a point of singularity or a black hole in 2012 and it failed. This would explain why an article from March this year said that they were trying to create a mega hadron collider 3 times bigger, and I believe this all ties in with the threats from the cell tower that we're going to come to later. We looked at connections through to Stephen Hawking, to the international government fraud leading into Hollywood, to the Russian previous government as well, the Gorbachev family, linking back in to a very important Jewish document via an RAC company, and that Jewish document ties in with the theory of evolution via the Charles Darwin Trust. Other very interesting companies on there, including the royal family companies, links to Switzerland, to the Madeleine McCann case, the NHS, and other connections as well. Please verify and corroborate all of the information that I'm going to show you as we move forward. Particularly important, I can't emphasize enough, the Companies House records, is the government's own registration system. There is a trail of evidential links proving what they've been up to, and they are now completely backed into a corner. You need to get this evidence out to as many people as you can. I am being silenced almost, they're suppressing all of my evidence. I am sending the documents out as well to everyone that I can, but you need to do the networking on this. If we do not resolve this, and I'm right about this, then we're in serious trouble. We must stop the targeting, the suffering of what looks like now not only children and humanity, but creation itself, all tying into the blood taken from children and a very sinister group of what appears to be a doomsday cult. Everyone needs to unite behind this. The last director that we're looking at links to the Mental Health Foundation and Build Africa. Now, the reason I've put these, if they control everything, everybody, so they accuse people of having mental health issues that try and speak the truth, they're the ones that are suffering. Well, I'm not going to say that because that's not fair, because if they truly believe they've got to do this, then I believe they've been completely misguided. And I'm going to come to that in the theory at the end of these documents. But they certainly want to silence individuals that will risk exposing all of this fraud. And it's very interesting why they haven't stopped me completely. And I'm going to come to that again in the theory. So we also have Build Africa. And I've put that because there's a lot of previous Africa connections. And Africa is obviously a neglected country, or we're led to believe, of course. And it's the ideal place for them to take children from the poorer countries, and also the international conflicts. They take children from the international conflicts as well, according to the information. So we also have a link to CALFP Limited that was started in 1994. Changed its names, you can see several times on the right there, in 1994. And they linked through to Office Organisation and Services Limited on the left. You can see Swift Incorporations underneath, so we know it's linked to Jordans and Swift. And on the right, we've just gone into them. They've got over 800, is that 800? Yep, 800 companies previously linked to them. And I'm just showing some examples of how big this is. So Jaguar Land Rover Automotive PLC. And that is a criminal company. Everybody? Now, it's criminal, and they'll be using this as payment methods, as to hide, well, they'll be likely using it, shall we say, the fraudulent entity companies. They should never have traded in the first place, But, of course, they can transfer any defunded, laundered money through into assets such as cars, yachts. You may have seen on my other evidence, Ferrari company linked to it, and this is how they're laundering the money through into these tangible assets. You can see here that at the last time it changed its name was in December 2012. Okay, the year that we've been talking about, the year of the Higgs boson particle. And it's still, is it still active? Yeah, it's still active. Okay, so last time, 2012, hasn't changed its name since. Changed it several times before, hasn't changed it since the Higgs boson particle. On the left, same director is linked to, or the same company is linked to Matsui. Just put that in there because that's previously featured. Hydrogen Energy International. And below that, I haven't got into it actually because I only noticed it afterwards. Notice Cleopatra UK Limited, a reference to Egyptian mythology. I'm going to come to all of that, hopefully, if I get a chance. And we're all still here at the end of all of this. So Hydrogen Energy International. It's linked to the fraud immediately via 55 Baker Street. And it dissolved the month before the outbreak in Wuhan. Okay, and that outbreak is, it's not what we're led to believe. I'm guaranteeing you with all of the evidence that I'm acquiring. It is a false flag to hide the real threat linking into the cell towers. Okay, but this dissolved a month before the outbreak in Wuhan. On the incorporation document, Jordan's Limited, a criminal company, the same company that started Exborn Manor. On the right, same director we were looking at is linked to Bernardo Social Enterprises, obviously a charitable organisation that was started in 2006 and dissolved in July 2012, 20 days after the Higgs boson particle was created at CERN. Remember, this is all coming in from CERN. Okay, this is coming in from CERN via Stephen Hawking and the connection there. It's a criminal fraudulent company, Jordan's again. On the right, the same director connects to JP Morgan Income and Growth Investment Trust PLC. JP Morgan is a huge, very important connection in all of this. It's linked to the Flemings. Okay, they're linked to the Flemings, who are, as we know, a banking family. So this company, JP Morgan Income Growth Investment Trust PLC, has an address that links to the fraud, and it dissolved in May 2019, the year of the outbreak, a few months before it. So we've talked about horizon, and we've talked about black holes and how this ties in with everything in a point of singularity, and I have mentioned event horizon. So research on event horizon, it says, in astrophysics, an event horizon is a boundary beyond which events cannot affect an outside observer. Wolfgang Reindler coined the term in the 1950s. In 1784, John Mitchell proposed that gravity can be strong enough in the vicinity of massive compact objects that even light cannot escape. At that time, the Newtonian theory of gravitation and the so-called corpuscular, probably pronouncing that right, wrong, theory of light were dominant. In these theories, if the escape velocity of the gravitational influence of a massive object exceeds the speeds of light, then light originating inside or from it can escape temporarily but will return. In 1958, the year that NASA was founded and the year that Prince Charles, or Charles at that time, aged 9, started to be initiated to become the Prince of Wales in 1959. In this year, reading on, it says David Finkelstein used general relativity to introduce a stricter definition of a local black hole event horizon. Okay, so we're talking about black holes again, as a boundary beyond which events of any kind cannot affect an outside observer. Information further down talks about, you can see here, leading to information, just reading on from the last page, leading information on firewall paradoxes, encouraging the re-examination of the concept of local event horizons and the notion of black holes. Several theories were subsequently developed, some with and some without event horizons. One of the leading developers of theories to describe the black holes, Stephen Hawking, suggested that an apparent horizon should be used instead of an event horizon, saying gravitational collapse produces apparent horizons but no event horizons. He eventually concluded that the absence of event horizons means that there are no black holes in the sense of regimes from which light can't escape to infinity. So this is just showing, that Stephen Hawking was involved in that research and event horizons and black holes. And again, you can see some information here in relation to how it is affected by light and gravitational fields in relation to it, or referencing light. So in 1997, they released a movie called Event Horizon, 22nd of August. Okay, it was released in the United States on the 15th of August, 1997. That is a few days before the death of Princess Diana on the left. Okay. And I'd already previously referenced Princess Diana's death on the Satanic Temple document because it tied in with a company that linked and made Owens connections and a company of Betts, with Betts companies. Okay, now within Exborn Manor Freehold Limited, you have Diana Betts and you had Owens and Porter, who were the managing agent who resigned, who are linked to the Russian government very quickly via the previous evidence. Remember, they resigned when I wanted to look at the bank documents. Diana Betts was insistent that she came with me to that meeting. They refused to discuss anything at all, even though there were serious breaches in fire regulations, which we come to a bit later, actually, interestingly, because it links in with the fire industry, all of this. And Diana apologised to Stephen Owens for us coming there to talk about these very serious issues. And those companies, Owens Film Partners, I think it was called LLP, which linked into what I believe or suspect are child trafficking film companies. They linked to Turk and Connell Trustees Limited in Edinburgh, and they changed their names on some important dates, including a date close to the death of Princess Diana. And then from that research, it just went into loads of other important stuff. Also on the Satanic Temple document, I showed these relevant dates because of that company. So July 1955, which was close to the date on the document, Disneyland Resort opened in America. That ties in with evidence that I'm acquiring of the potential murder of the real heirs to the throne, probably by this doomsday satanic cult that I think is probably infiltrated by the Pharaoh Egyptian bloodline. So this was all around the same time, tying into that very important company. Okay, and of course we had Princess Diana's death. Now, interestingly, that was on Princess Diana's death was on the 31st of August 1997, so we're led to believe. So less than 2 months later, you had the death of the founder of the Church of Satan. And I think what happened around this time was the Egyptian bloodline infiltrated the Church of Satan to make all of what we're now seeing come to a head look like it's Satan and the Satanists. Now, I'm not saying I don't believe Satan exists, but they, I believe, are trying to make it appear to tie in to falsified biblical prophecies, which were triggered as the fraud continued to be exposed, including the attacks on the 7th of October 2023, as I was continuing to report the fraud. And that event is almost certainly staged. It's linked to all of the same companies through the research of the Nova Music Festival where it happened. Okay. Now, the reason I say about the Egyptian connection with this is Princess Diana was in a relationship with Dodi Fayed. Okay. And the Fayads, including Mohammed Al Fayed, are Egyptian. Okay. And when you go in through the Harrods companies, as shown on the Satanic Temple document and that I've done in a previous video, it links immediately to Exborn Manor Freehold Limited again, through into the international fraud in various ways. And that's going into the very first bit of Harrods. I haven't even delved into it much lately. Okay. And now, lo and behold, supposedly Mohammed Al Fayed passed away in 2023, supposedly, because I do believe they make people appear to be dead to the public when they're not. And now, suddenly, he's being investigated for sex offences. Okay, same thing as what happened with Jimmy Savile. So, August 1997, key time, and let's have a look at Event Horizon, the movie that came out. Now, bearing in mind, the Event Horizon makes references to a black hole and signifies almost a point of no return. So the movie came out in 1997. It stars Lawrence Fishburne, okay, Sam Neill and others, set in 2047. Now, 2040 is when they're claiming that they were going to plan to activate the first stage of the Mega Hadron Collider, okay, in 2040. I think then there was a mention of 2070, that they were going to really ramp up the power and do whatever it is they're planning with it, okay? So this movie came out in 1997. Let's have a look. Now, I've only done, I'm sure if I was to research this a little bit more, but obviously I'm limited on how much I can do. So I've just gone with Lawrence Fishburne, and he was born in 1961. Okay, this is a Hollywood actor that was in that movie. And you can see here he's done some interesting movies. Apocalypse Now, bearing in mind what we're talking about, came out in 1979, okay? That is the year that they were planning the Georgia Guidestone, which was erected in 1980. And that represented an upcoming apocalyptic event, man-made apocalyptic event, okay? So, yeah, some interesting movies. Obviously, he did the Matrix movies as well. And obviously, a lot of people say we're living in the Matrix. Certainly a system of control and crime and evil, really, from the looks of it. But also at the bottom here, you can see that he received this honour. Okay, so he received Harvard Foundation's Artist of the Year Award, okay, in 2007. He received this honour for the achievements as an actor and entertainer and for his humanitarian pursuits. And afterwards it says Fishburne is a UNICEF ambassador. So we're going to have a look at UNICEF. And somebody else actually has recently sent me some evidence in relation to UNICEF, so thank you very much to them. There's some people doing some great research, actually. And UNICEF, originally the United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund, okay, officially a United Nations Children's Fund since 1953. Now, again, we've spoken about this in these videos about CERN. 1953 is when the Queen was coronated, okay, Queen Elizabeth II. It's also the year of MK Ultra, okay, started according to the research. And those of you who follow my evidence, you will know that the research links to my family via MK Ultra. And the year I was born, 20,000 documents were declassified or something. I think it was declassified. But anyway, reading on, it says, is an agency of the United Nations responsible for providing humanitarian and development aid to children worldwide. Remember how they invert everything, though, okay? Save the Children, now being investigated for child trafficking, all right? So it is appearing quite overwhelmingly that all of these things they're saying are good things, charities for children, all these other charities are an inversion, and they're actually pure evil, it looks like, to do with money laundering, child trafficking, child abuse, crimes against humanity, all leading up to potentially the end of everything as we know it through the CERN Hadron Collider. You can see here it looked into sanitation, emergency relief in response to disasters, etc. Now, they actually, I believe, cause and trigger the disasters. And now, of course, they've got artificial intelligence. They can make it appear as though there's disasters going on in other locations to increase the fear on humanity. All right, now, a lot of people are saying to me they're feeding off of people's souls and fear and everything like that. And I mean, I can't verify that through my evidence, but it would not surprise me. We've definitely got a connection here to this very evil group of individuals. It would certainly appear that way from the overwhelming evidence, but we'll talk about that in the theory. And now you can see staff for UNICEF, the last time they calculated the staff, 2022. Nothing since on this, okay? So it's as if the exposure of the fraud, they haven't continued doing certain things. That's not just with this company. I've noticed that with some other things, because they're realizing, oh dear, we're now being fully exposed. We need to do XYZ, whatever it is they're now going to plan to do. UNICEF is the successor of the United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund and was created on the 11th of December 1946 in New York, okay? Bearing in mind, we've been talking about 1947 and 1948, the Israel-Arab War, okay? Well, this is the year before. So this is showing how important the children were to them. By the UN Relief, Rehabilitation and Administration to provide immediate relief to children and mothers affected by World War II. Think inversions, everybody, okay? More likely to steal children from the conflicts. The same year, the United Nations General Assembly established UNICEF in further institutional post-war relief work. In 1950, its mandate was extended to address the long-term needs of children and women, particularly in developing countries. In 1953, the organisation became the permanent part of the United Nations system, and its name was changed to United Nations Children's Fund, though it remains UNICEF acronym. So I put his UNICEF links to JP Morgan. It says JP Morgan Chase has partnered with UNICEF in various philanthropic oh my goodness, I'm tired, efforts, including providing financial support for disaster relief and other UNICEF programs. For example, JP Morgan Chase made a $30,000 US donation to UNICEF to support recovery efforts in Vietnam after Typhoon Yagi. Additionally, UNICEF lists JP Morgan Chase as one of its incorporate partners. Very likely, I suspect, all the involvement is to steal the children in relation to the international child trafficking. It's hugely connected to this, the international fraud, JP Morgan and the Flemings. And, you know, if the police were doing something with this, I wouldn't be disclosing all of this, but I don't have a choice. They're ignoring, everybody needs to remember this, they're ignoring all of the evidence. This is multiple police reports now. Okay, I've reported to pretty much every UK police force. They're all ignoring it. 650 members of parliament. They know they're fully exposed, everybody. And they are in a corner now. And this is why this is so dangerous. And we need the masses to get behind this evidence, because I am limited in what I can do. Okay, I wish I could go and arrest all of these people myself. I can't do that. I'm one person. So let's have a look at the United Kingdom Committee for UNICEF. Comes up when you search UNICEF. And on the incorporation document, we have a Robin James Sinclair Taylor, and the address 9 Thorpe Close features throughout the fraud. You also have a Citizens Advice Bureau there, and as you know, that features throughout the fraud, and that is where it was declared at the Citizens Advice Bureau. Further down on the document, we have an Andrew Fleming. Okay. Andrew Fleming Mind, actually. They put the surname as Mind, but there's no verification. Okay, no verification whatsoever on Companies House, and that is deliberate. They verify everything else. Okay, we have to provide details of our name, of our address for most things, don't we? But not with Companies House. They haven't done it. Certainly not in this fraud, and that is deliberate to allow the crimes against humanity. And look, on the document you have BBC Worldwide Service. BBC World Service, sorry. On the same incorporation document. Further down, if it loads up, we also have a Sir Cyril Townsend of an address in Cornwall, and they link to the advancement of Arab-British leadership. Does that say? Can't read that. But it's Arab-British, the Council for the Advancement of Arab and British something. Now, this ties in with the Iranian Green Movement, okay, which is all tying in with the immigration issues that we're all aware of, and it appears as though there's an infiltration into all faith groups, but particularly Muslims at the moment, to create this risk of conflict and divide to fit what appears to fit the Albert Pike letter to Mazzini, written in 1871, 100 years before the creation of the World Economic Forum. And I suspect that was their plan. But of course, as the exposure continues, their plans are changing. And I think the ultimate plan is CERN to create this point of singularity. That's what everything suggests. We have an address here in Hampshire, one of the directors, Mary Crofton in Hampshire, which is obviously important. It's where Deborah Fleming was the NHS chief executive. So on the left here, within the United Nations company, we have Sean Carney, quite likely a relative of the now Canada Prime Minister, and I've seen evidence, someone sending me evidence actually linking Mark Carney to Jeffrey Epstein, okay, via his, I think it's via his wife or sister-in-law or both. So hopefully if I get a chance, I'll release the evidence on that. Thank you to that individual that sent it. So they're linked to UNICEF UK Enterprises Limited. You see the name changes here. It started in 1992, everybody. Remember what we've said about the World Wide Web being created in 1989, leading into 1990, the Gulf War, 1991, the creation of the Terminator 2 movie, Judgment Day, and 1992, the electronic register for Companies House being initiated, which is where this fraud is taking place. And you can see they changed the name again in August 2002 after the World Trade Center disaster, and it's an active company, and there's been no other name changes since, and it's a criminal organization. Okay, you Swifting, and remember we're talking about UNICEF UK Enterprises here, Swifting Corporations Limited, and Jordans and Sons Limited, the same companies that started Export Manor Freehold Limited. And remember, Jordans and Sons was founded in 1965, the year before the Church of Satan was founded. On the left, within that company, David Ball links to, on the right, the Association of Chief Executives of Voluntary Organisations. Okay, so charities. And remember, the Freemasons all about charities. And that exact same company has featured on my recent evidence in relation to the helicopter crash in America. Here it is, Association of Chief Executives of Voluntary Organisations. And much of the evidence on the helicopter crash research connects through into the Church of the Satanic Temple United Kingdom research. And you can see here on the helicopter crash, we had a United Nations Association International Service, okay, company that was started in 1997, okay, which is again relevant. Bearing in mind we've been talking about 1997 with the death of Princess Diana and the other things that we've been talking about, okay, 1997, and then it linked into that same company. In the UNICEF UK company, we have Paddy Coulter, links to Comic Relief. I've just shown that because that features in the research for the international child trafficking previously, and obviously it's a charitable organisation. On the left, John Roberts, links to, on the right, Royal Southern Yacht Club Limited. So we've got a royal connection, and as I've mentioned, yachts are very important in relation to this because they can transfer the criminally obtained money, whether it be from fraudulently defrauded tax contributions or other means. They can put it into these tangible assets of yachts. Within the yacht company on the right there, Bronwyn Curtis, who was appointed in November 2024, okay, after I'm exposing the fraud, links to Australia Day. Okay, now I'm only showing you some of this, right? This is international fraud, everybody, not just the Commonwealth countries either. Okay, this is a massive worldwide problem we are facing. Massive infiltration by the leaders. Okay, so they've positioned people at the heads of the organizations, okay, and that's how they've managed to achieve this, because once they have the top controlled, it filters down through everything else, and they capture other people. So the ranking system within the police, chief constable at the top, and then obviously you have lower ranks but still in charge of other officers. They infiltrate, compromise them, and that's how they've done it, through this ranking system. They're also linked on the right there. You can see the Scottish American Investment Company PLC. And they also link to, on the left, JP Morgan Asian Growth and Income PLC. On the right, they also link to the United Nations Association of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Remember, this is coming in from UNICEF that we found a link from the movie. I've forgotten the name of it, Event Horizon. So again, this is a criminal organisation, everybody. Swifting Corporations and Jordans. This is a United Nations organisation. Let that sink in. And it's criminal, all right? They're running the world almost, okay? United Nations at the forefront of all this. So let's have a look at the United Nations a little bit more. So the United Nations is an intergovernmental organisation that aims to maintain international peace and security. Remember inversions, okay? They're actually behind all of the terrorism and the wars linking into the police and all of what we're seeing. That's pretty much guaranteed now with this evidence, okay? Develop friendly relationships among states, promote international cooperation, think inversions, and serve as a centre for coordinating global action. Widely recognised as the world's largest international organisation, 193 members accounting for nearly all of the world's sovereign states. And you can see here the United Nations office at Geneva was established in 1946. 2 years before the Israel-Arab War, and the United Nations were involved in establishing that war through its petition in 1947. And that all goes back to 1917, involving the Rothschilds, which linked throughout this fraud, which led to the Israel-Arab Wars. And you can see it is based in Geneva. So, many of you actually will come to this in the next part because we've done 30 minutes and we're going to be talking about the post office and Horizon Scandal Fund. Horizon, bearing in mind what we're talking about, the largest miscarriage of justice in the UK's history. Come back for the next part. Thanks very much.